Okay, there we go. Today, it's probably just going to be about a half an hour long or so, but we're going to be talking a little bit about what this module is all about, which deals with things like proportion and sacred number and geometry. I don't think I talk an awful lot about sacred number, but just the process of geometry is something that our ancestors have used since the beginning of people making stuff. And the the word sacred, I think, a lot of the times is misused, overused, and maybe inappropriately used sometimes, and is definitely misunderstood. In an art context, when we talk about things like sacred geometry, um, you know what? First off, how are you guys' weekends? Did you guys have good weekends?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, I don't know if you can see my shirt. Can you see the top of my shirt? I went to the Bigfoot Rendezvous in Pocatello, Idaho, and it was an awful lot of fun. I got my 18-year-old daughter who wants a tattoo of Sasquatch, a cast of one of the Bigfoot prints that they had on display. So I was pretty stoked. My sister, who passed away a couple years ago, was Shoshone, and I met a woman who's a Shoshone wisdom keeper, and she's also a degreed anthropologist. And it was kind of fun just talking to her and learning a little bit about what Indigenous peoples' perspectives are on things that uh, European settlers or the descendants of European settlers commonly refer to as cryptids. It was kind of a fun weekend, and found in Pocatello a little hole in the wall that ended up being the best tasting Thai food I've had in a long time. All right, sorry for that little diversion. Just making an effort to sound like I actually care about you guys, even though I only talked about myself. Did anybody have a really, really good weekend? Was it just okay? Did anybody get hurt? Anybody lose a family member, whether or not you wanted to?
I just had soccer all weekend.
Well, it's good to know what you're in for, isn't it? Good to know what you expect. I, I, I was having a little bit of an issue over the weekend of putting the module on. Canvas didn't seem to be working as well as it normally does, so it was a little bit late going on. I hope that didn't hurt anybody's feelings terribly. But the kinds of modules that we're dealing with how to look at art and how to understand art with using your critical thinking skills that you're developing as just a human being and as a university student. And so this class is quite a bit different than other intro to art or art appreciation classes you may take, because I really want you, when you're all done, I want you to feel empowered, so that if anybody shows you anything, basically you can be able to describe it, you can be able to articulate how you feel about it, how you respond to it, what you think the artist is trying to do, and whether or not the art itself was successful. And I want you to be able to move with confidence when you talk about the art that you produce and the art that other people make. And when you have those irritating extended relatives at family get-togethers who ask you why you're wasting your time, you have something to be able to use to explain. I noticed that if you use precise and big words when you talk and you speak with confidence, it usually intimidates people into shutting up and leaving you alone. And that's the gift I want to give you in this class. But this module, I want to dive a little bit more into proportion and something that is called sacred geometry. What do you think sacred means in this context? Are we talking about religion? No, sacred, you're absolutely right, Alex. Sacred geometry has been used in countless religions over time, but it is separate from religion. It is quite separate. Sacred shares a very similar root to another word that means body. and it is used in several different things, like sarcastic has a similar root, sacrament has a similar root. And sacrament means a it's essentially a codified sequence of events that is meant to articulate or lead the participant to either a higher state of consciousness or a greater awareness of something beyond themselves. And it is usually a very specific set of actions. It's not necessarily, and it is used to describe a lot of things. But for myself, I really enjoy going to places like Pine Valley. And one thing that I'd like to do in Pine Valley is a senses walk, where I just kind of open myself up to the environment as I go on a walk and try to feel and see and breathe and smell as much as I can of the area that's there. And when I do that, I seem to move beyond the ordinary cares of the world, and I get to a state that is pretty much almost an altered state of consciousness, a meditative state. And that process itself, I feel, is it's not a profane process. It's not an everyday mundane thing. It's kind of a special kind of thing to go on a walk like that, where you open yourself up to the outside world. And that process itself, because it is pretty much a sequence of events that repeats when I want to gain that kind of meditative state, it has become something of a sacrament. And each of us has those kinds of things. Sometimes when you get ready for a test, when you are desperate to engage that part of your brain which holds all the information that you know is in there hiding somewhere, sometimes that can be a sacrament as well, because you're trying to get to a meditative state that's outside of ordinary day-to-day cognition. And so those are the things that we're kind of leaning towards when we talk about sacred geometry, not necessarily specific religion. It's definitely not specific religion. Some examples of sacred geometry could be like Stonehenge or Göbekli Tepe. Both of those are organized around central points of interest. It develops a circle. It uses things like called archaeoastronomy, where they're built in alignment with where stars rose and where the sun was thousands of years ago at the point that they were built or designed. Another good example of that is the Egyptian pyramids. It's built, the Egyptian pyramids are not just randomly placed. They're used, the builders, the architects and designers used sacred geometry to place them, so that it actually, if you look at a satellite image of the pyramids, you can see the stars of Orion. And actually 2 further pyramids were discovered under the sand that were relative sizes to the brightness of the stars in Orion, because they were able to use those great pyramids as a proportionate belt of the star of Orion, and kind of guess where the other stars would be if they were also symbolized with pyramids. And like I said, they found at least 2 other pyramids hidden under the sand. They were just the foundations, but it was people were using at that time, thousands of years ago, sacred geometry to lay out the proportions of monuments. Another good example is Angkor Wat. They did the same kind of thing with that. But the geometry we're talking about is people assigning meaning to numbers, or responding to the meaning inherent in numbers, either way, and using those as a symbolic way to communicate information outside of just the thing itself. And these sacred numbers could be, well, how can I say this? Every number to somebody is going to be a sacred number. If you pick a number between 1 and 20, anybody.
10.
10. 10 is a sacred number. It is a double of 5. Most of the time when 5 numbers are used in a sacred space, the doubles are also sacred. But it's also the number of primary points, the double helix, when you look down the central axis of a DNA chain. And what is fascinating to me is that you look at a lot of the Persian, specifically Persian Islamic art, and 10 is used as a repeating number throughout that. There are 5 central pillars to Islam. There are 5 main sacraments to Christianity. So 5 is a sacred number, but also there were 5 points to somebody when they prayed. In a lot of these ancient religions, they would stand with feet about shoulder width apart. They would have their hands outstretched, and they would vocalize with their head. And those 5 things, the 2 feet, 2 hands, and the head made 5 points of a star facing up. And when the star was pointing down, it meant inspiration, or it was the return or the answer to that supplication. And that is true of cave art, petroglyphs, all the way to Egyptian paintings that are over 5,000 years old. And more recently, you can see in early 1st, 2nd, 3rd century Christian depictions of baptismal areas, sites, or religious sites. You can see a person praying in just the same manner as well. And that's just with 10. And we can do that with any of those numbers. We can find somebody has latched onto them and developed a geometry based on that number. That's why I wanted to do 1 through 9, actually 3 through 9, show you guys those, because basically those, you can find that religions around the world have used 11, 13, and 17, and 19 as well as sacred numbers. More often than not, though, it's the ones that are divisible are used more often. But it doesn't really matter because all of them are sacred to somebody. 11 and 17 are used by some sects of Shia Islam. 13 is a very sacred number that was used by early Christians. I mentioned earlier that there were 13 zodiac signs, and one of those signs was used to symbolize each of the 12 members of that, the group of 12 apostles, as well as the head of the group of 12 apostles, which was the Jesus figure. So Ophiuchus, for example, was the 13th zodiac sign, and that was used to represent the completion of the quorum, or Jesus. But the reason why I want you guys to go through those videos and try and make a star is because more than just being able to do something kind of cool with a compass and a straight edge, I think it helps us to understand and appreciate a little bit more about what our ancestors did art-wise. If they are aware of these kinds of things, like that, I want you to make the golden section spiral, because one of the videos I showed you, the person is able to look at the Renaissance work and find golden spirals everywhere. It was very obvious that the Renaissance artists used that golden proportion everywhere. Now, a very important question, though, with sacred geometry and golden section proportions, are they necessary to create art? No, you're both right. Absolutely not. They are not necessary. They are a good thing to use in your toolbox when you're looking at art, when you're thinking about it. If you find art in a religious setting, there is a really good chance that you can pull out your toolbox of sacred numbers and golden section, and there's a good chance it's going to be used in that religious themed art. It doesn't matter what faith the people are that have created that space, there's a good chance it's going to be used. Even the Bauhaus, which was very agnostic, it was designed specifically without reference to religion, that used things like golden section number and golden section proportion and sacred numbers out the wazoo. Look at a lot of Corbusier used a lot of that in his own design. But we find that being able to have that in your back pocket and being comfortable enough that you can draw a sacred egg form, or you can draw a 9-pointed star. What that does is forces a cognitive shift in your brain so that you're able to start making associations that your peers are going to be completely oblivious to. You're going to be able to start seeing that the screen of your cell phone or a box that you find at some random shelf of Walmart is designed specifically to attract your eye, because the designers know that you automatically respond to certain proportions. I'm going to give you another proportion that is not, there's no video, it's not in the quiz or anything like that, but it's the 3x7 angle. If you create a vertical line and you go over to the side 3 steps and you go down 7 steps and then you connect those 2 points, you are going to create a certain diagonal. This diagonal, it's a 3x7 triangle. This diagonal is used in almost every tilt of the head of any praying saint that you see in depictions throughout the Byzantine era. We're talking 3rd century to 12th, 13th century, and even forward in time. Do you know what's significant about that angle? It is also the angle of the axial tilt of the Earth. How'd those guys know? Okay, there's this stuff like this is really fun to know, but you can start recognizing it in art. When you see a saint, or you can see a person who has their head tilted, you can tell if the artist is referencing a saint by the angle of the tilt. Now, because you know that. How many primary colors are there? Let's say in paint and also in light. It's different. It's a
3.
different set. There's 3. What are the 3 primary colors in pigment or paint?
Red, yellow, and blue.
Right. What are the 3 primary colors in light? Think about the front of an old TV set. What are the 3 colors that they show you? Red, green, and blue. What are the 3? Can you guess what the 4 principal colors are in religious iconography shared among Jews, Muslims, and Christians? And even Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism? What do you think those 4 principal colors are that they use in their iconography? Red, yellow, blue, green. How do they know? I can understand red, yellow, and blue because that's going to be true whenever you use pigment. But how do they know that green was the primary color of light? Usually, if there's religious figures that are split into the Trinity, like in Christianity, those 3 primary colors are not going to be red, yellow, and blue. They're going to be red, blue, and green. And then yellow is usually used to depict or connote something special like divine information or inspiration. Isn't that interesting? How do they know that? Like in Christian iconography, going back 2,000 years, red or green almost always connotes Mother Earth or the Holy Spirit. Red almost always refers to Jesus or the Son, and blue almost always refers to Mary, the mother of Jesus, or purity, or God, the pan-creator. That's usually a darker blue. And then yellow or gold always refers to heaven or divinely inspired wisdom. Isn't that interesting? Now, that deals with color, and we're here to talk about examples of golden section and angles and things like that. But you can see that these things that people hold as very important, or another word that we can use for that is sacred, are used to connote a level of meaning beyond just the structures that you see in the artwork. What is really fascinating, if you guys are interested, we can talk more about as well, that alchemy was used in that as well. If there were specific metals or alchemical planets, astrological planets associated with saintly figures in paintings, you may see 2 different shades of blue in the same painting. And these 2 shades of blue will be referring to different biblical figures, but one pigment will be made with silver, for example, and another pigment will be made with copper, because those 2 metals have a further reference to what those figures represent. Like if her robes of blue are used with silver in the paint, or she has silver in her halo, that's a reference to the moon and is a reference also to divine femininity. Isn't that interesting? And there's a bunch of other stuff like that too, but those are interesting things to know as you move forward, because then it gives you a different level of meaning in the work that you're examining. What are some examples just around you that you can see right now of golden section proportion? Your computer screen, the layout of keys on your keypad, your hand. Remember we talked all about that last week. What else? Your face, the logo design on your shirt if you have one. Not a shirt, a logo design. Your car keys, the way they're designed. The layout of writing on a page. When you see an advertisement, either on Facebook or in print, how do you think the advertiser knows where to place the wording or the important words in that ad? They know that your eyes follow things like golden section proportions. They know your eyes will look at those orthogon diagonals, and they will place the important words in the principal spots that your eyes naturally rest on. Isn't that interesting? And it's a little bit manipulative. Do you guys have any questions about the project assignment, the 4 elements of the project? What are the 4 elements of the project for this week? What's the first one? Drawing the golden section spiral. And that you can do, I want you to, if you take like a regular layout of a piece of paper and you do a 6-inch square at one end, then you can use that to lay out the rest of the golden section spiral. Because you just start with the 6-inch square at one end and use that to build the spiral. Okay. And the easiest way to do that is okay, this is a rough drawing. Hopefully you guys can see it. Okay, can you see that? Top we have the square, and I split it in half. I would use a compass and a straight edge for this. And then I use that to develop the diagonal to build the rest of the golden section rectangle. And then I'll build my spiral by starting with this as the first part, and then make another square out of this part, and just keep spiraling it in from there. Does that make sense? You watch that video? So yeah, watch that third video and follow along to make the golden section spiral. And then what are the next 2 parts of the project? Did you guys read it? The next 2 parts are
I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay, all right. You're going to see short videos, and they're all 2 to 7 minutes at the most, showing you how to draw a circle and make a triangle, square, then a 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 pointed stars. So there's a short video for each of those. And then there's another one that shows you how to divide a circle into any number of sides, and then you can make a star with any number of sides from that. And the second part of the project is picking 2 of those stars, 5 through 9, to demonstrate, to follow along. And this does seem pretty simple, the description of the project, but everybody will probably have to do each one 2 or 3 times before you get the hang of it, and then you just turn in your best one. Okay, you do have to watch all of the videos and then just focus on 2 of the stars. But then the 4th element of the project is to watch the egg, how they draw an egg. And if you don't understand it, you can find other videos that also show you how to do an egg. But this is a specific egg that is designed using basically the sacred proportions and a circle and a compass and a straight edge. So the 4 sets of parts of this week's project is first, making a golden section spiral. Second and third, making 2 stars. And you do 5 and 7. You can do 6 and 8. You can do 9 and 5, whatever you want. But you've got to make 2 of those so that they look good. And then the last section is drawing a sacred egg form. And you can follow along with that video. You can find other ones to read. This will probably be a little bit shorter than some of the other modules that we've worked on, but I'm counting on the fact that everybody's going to have to screw up and redo their things, you know, 2 or 3 times to come up with something that is good enough that you can take a picture of it and submit. And we want it to look nice. You've got to use a straight edge. You can't freehand it. You've got to use a compass. You can't. I've had people turn this in by doing a freehand circle, and it looks like, you know, somebody sat on Humpty Dumpty. It looks really sad. You've got to use these tools and make it look really good. All right. And if you guys are interested, I will show you how to draw a diagram of the city of heaven that was used to design the Taj Mahal. And that's basically a 28-pointed star. So it's a little bit more complicated than what we're doing here. And we may even do that as one of our projects. That might be kind of cool. Do you guys have any questions about this module or anything that I've talked about? All right. So basically, what we are talking about when we're dealing with things like proportions and sacred geometry is the placement of what you see, and recognizing that it was, and respecting that it was important to whoever it was that made it. We're not talking about a specific religion. We're not talking about a specific church. These are things that people have done since the beginning of time, when people started making stuff to generate meaning beyond the simple lines that they were using. You know, if we are aware of how people build stuff and place it in their artwork, that helps us to gain a greater appreciation and understanding of the artwork itself and the intent of the artist. Does that make sense to everybody? And this will also be another set of tools in your arsenal of observation as you look at, with your keys of critical thinking at artwork by other people, and your own too. If something feels off balance or whatever, you can use these kind of tools to see what you need to include. And when you're examining artwork that's completely new to you, you can see if they're using this. And a lot of the times, particularly Renaissance artists and advertisers will use these things very specifically to guide your attention. And pretty much have a dialogue with you as your eyes move through their piece. And there are a number of artists that really use it to good advantage. All right, guys, if there's no other questions, then if there are any questions for people that view this later, just hit me up with an email and we can address them in next week's get together. But if there's no other questions, then that's good for now. All righty. All right, you guys have great weeks.
You too.
All right, we'll see you later. You're welcome.